The winner of Survivor, Edge of Extinction, Chris.
Wait, they won Survivor? But it didn't seem like that was going to happen going into Final Tribal Council. When Jeff reveals who has won each season of Survivor, emotions are everywhere. Some of us are rooting for that player, and some wish that almost anyone else would have won instead. Sometimes who wins is super obvious, and sometimes we as an audience are blindsided. This list was inspired by a certain vote reveal that has a spot on this list, but this video was picked by my lovely patrons. So which seasons have the most shocking winner reveals? Let's find out. I want to thank you all for liking, commenting, and subscribing to this channel. This video was made possible by the patrons on my Patreon. If you want to help this channel grow and make more content, then consider joining them on Patreon. You get all of this channel's videos early, and every month vote on what videos I should make and who I should make them about. Like this one. Thank you for your support. Before we start this countdown, be warned, there are a ton of spoilers here. I will be spoiling at least 10 seasons and how they end. So if you haven't watched all 40 seasons and want to remain unspoiled, then I have lots of other videos to watch. But with that warning, now you know. Let's begin. Number 10, season 23, South Pacific. This one is a doozy for those who are completely blown away by how Coach, of all people, seemed to run a season from top to bottom. The storytelling even tells you all of his blunders along the way, and yet it still has you thinking going into Final Tribal that he's got this. This is his game to lose, and before Final Tribal, he gives this amazing speech about how much he has grown since his first season, and now it is his time to rise like a phoenix and become the ultimate survivor.
I started this journey 3 years ago. I wanted to change the game, and I nicknamed myself the Dragon Slayer. Now is the third and final chapter of my journey on Survivor. I see myself going from destruction to absolute victory.
And while we do hear from his opponents, Albert, about how he thinks he has played the best game of the three, and Sophie, who doesn't really take a stance on her game or whether she thinks she can win, simply watching this season will tell you that there's no way Albert is winning, as he doesn't seem generally respected. So this Final Tribal is a formality for better or worse, right? Coach the check. However, it all comes crashing down during Final Tribal, and the rug is pulled from under our feet as we realize Coach is blowing this hard.
You gotta be honest. Your game philosophy has been a certain thing. The honor, all of that. We all know it's a bunch of bull.
So I think I played this game most of the time honorably, but there were times when I was definitely dishonorable. I had to compromise my word, and I found myself breaking my word. And it hurt me. I knew that it hurt other people.
And that was just the first juror. It gets worse and worse, as I don't think Coach even thinks he is blatantly lying to people. I think he has bought into his own misconceptions, but unfortunately for him, no one else has. And Sophie has been tearing him down this entire time, calling him a girl who will do whatever she wants, and pointing out how he purposefully pulled the wool over everyone's eyes when he used religion as a weapon. And this most certainly has jurors feeling hurt by what he has done to them.
About the individual immunity idol, you did not play it at all. Were you going to use that immunity idol individually or for the team?
Can I just clear something up about the idol too? The idol was actually not found the way that Upolo thought it was found. Coach then found the idol, and we originally thought we would keep it for the three of us, and so we staged a discovery of the idol.
Cochran is the final juror, and he tells Coach how amazing he played, and this feels like a breath of fresh air and hope for the person who seems like the story is telling us ran this game all season. But even when that happens, Sophie is there to tell us the truth.
I'm just not that kind of person. In my real life, I'm not a devious person. I'm not a strategist, and it came to bite me.
I think it's probably my fault, because I was his strategist, so.
But who is Sophie after all? And the jury can't surely believe that she was the brains of the operation this whole time, right? Well, when Jeff reveals the votes, it turns out...
Coach. Sophie.
Whoa.
Coach. Sophie. Coach. Sophie. Sophie, the winner of Survivor South Pacific. Sophie.
By the time this Final Tribal was done, it seemed like Coach had shot his own game in the foot, but going into Final Tribal, the story made it seem like it was his game to lose, and he did certainly do just that. Number 9, Season 13, Cook Islands. The first ever Final 3 in Survivor, and it features the Brains versus the fan favorite Challenge Beast versus Becky. At this point, it is a 2-horse race like most Final Threes are, except the fan favorite actually made it to the end for once instead of being cut right before Final Tribal. Ozzy is a very lovable character this season, while Yul is a very cerebral but kind of dull character himself.
I had to play the game with as much integrity as I could. I know that I failed in a lot of respects, but hopefully people won't hold it against me that I beat them.
Ozzy is that guy you want to hang out with, and who is the last person we hear from before Final Tribal with fun Caribbean style music playing behind them? Why, it's Ozzy, of course, explaining how he broke stereotypes, did a lot of things that he hopes the jury sees, like winning 5 out of the last 6 individual immunity challenges, and he says he's up against 2 lawyers. He is our fun, hardworking underdog.
And I've broken a lot of stereotypes. I'm a surfer up against 2 lawyers. Hopefully my actions speak for themselves.
The fact that this really is a 2-horse race in the jury's eyes is shown with our first juror, Nate. He compliments Yul for playing like the Godfather gangster boss, while Ozzy is given credit as the person who is the hard worker physically. Ozzy takes this golden opportunity to clearly explain how he played like an underdog and was underestimated with his strategic play.
The very first third of this game, I played an incredibly pivotal role in deciding the ultimate fate of the game. And maybe I did play up the fact that, yeah, bro, I'm a surfer dude, don't worry about me. I'll provide the fish and I'll be chill, man. So I played that.
While Ozzy is the fan favorite, it's hard to deny how Yul ran the game, and she voices this and really gives them both a shot to explain why their path to the end is worth $1 million. Yul states how he wanted to break stereotypes and give those at home a person who they could relate to, since he didn't see many people like him on TV growing up. It is a touching speech from him.
One of the main reasons I wanted to even be on Survivor was the fact that minorities were underrepresented on media. Like when I grew up, I didn't see people look like me on TV. If I do win this game, I'd want to be a very visible spokesperson for talking about how we can move forward and try to get more minorities represented on TV.
Ozzy contrasts Yul's answer by saying a very similar thing, but for his own race of people, which feels a bit like piggybacking what Yul said, but goes to show just how neck and neck it is between these two.
I have very similar interests and goals, and that is changing the stereotypes and the classic image of, hey, what's a Mexican? So using my position, I think that I can become a positive role model for any kind of kid out there.
We then get this very touching, emotional moment from Ozzy that we have never, ever seen from Yul that at this point seals the deal for us at home.
The most challenging experience in my life would probably be the relationship that I have with my father. It's just a different thing to know that the person that created you doesn't want you around or whatever.
After that moment, how could we not want Ozzy to win? It's clear as day. He is the fan favorite. Well, the votes are revealed, and
Yul. Ozzy. Yul. Yul. Ozzy. Ozzy. Ozzy.
Oh my God.
Yul, the winner of Survivor Cook Islands.
this one is lower on the list because Yul winning isn't as shocking as the rest of this list, but the story sure pushes Ozzy as the one to root for until the very end, and that one vote he didn't get made all of the difference. Number 8, Season 2, The Australian Outback. Have you ever stopped and asked yourself how every person on Earth knew that Colby lost when he took Tina to the end over Keith? Why does it seem inevitable that he wasn't going to win when he was America's sweetheart and golden boy when the season aired? The story was told through his eyes, and he was the morality the general audience wanted to see on television after Borneo. The fact of the matter is that Colby didn't lose when he picked Tina, but watching him slowly seal his fate during Final Tribal made sure that we had high hopes going in and a bad gut feeling coming out. The last castaway we hear from before Tribal is Colby, and he tells us that he has played selfish all game, and if you view things through Jerry's eyes instead of his, you would see this is absolutely true. But he made a selfless move at the end to take Tina instead, which makes his shot at winning drop from about 99% to less than 50% with Tina. His words, not mine.
I feel certain I probably could have won against Keith. I don't even know that I have a 50-50 shot against Tina.
But in our heart of hearts, we are sure Colby still has this in the bag. He has a humble attitude, and it makes us all that more endeared to him as a result after following his story all season, hearing funny one-liners, and painting himself as the hero to Jerry and Keith being the villains, and etc. So when Final Tribal comes and Tina starts off pretty well, Colby continues to not only humble himself to us, but now to the jury, and it is feeling a bit more dire and dire for this man. He doesn't seem like he wants it. He doesn't seem like he wants to win. This man, this myth, this legend that has been the star of the season doesn't want to win.
Well, I guess we're supposed to make a spiel here about why we deserve $1 million or why I deserve it over Tina, and I don't know that I do.
What is he doing? He is the audience's pride and joy. Say you won a ton of challenges that ensured the other tribe went home. Say how you played Jerry and made her and Amber feel safe so they wouldn't flip on you. I mean, that might not be the right move, but the idea here is that Colby needs to want this. Come on, Colby, you got this. That's what we are thinking and feeling at this time. But the man who had a passion and a drive for the first 40 or 41 days of the game has lost it here on day 42 as he continually plays himself down over and over and over again. Tina isn't perfect, and the jury isn't enamored by her that much more than they are by Colby, and Jerry has been into him all game and feels a bit betrayed by, and she sets him up in a way that could potentially secure her vote if he handles the situation correctly. She asks, does he have any regrets in this game? So the perfect answer to this question by Colby would be to say how he treated Jerry. He regrets that, to explain how he let the game twist his mind and made her the enemy when she actually wasn't. All she wanted to do was work with him and maybe be his girlfriend, but that's a whole other thing. Basically, he needs to humble himself and apologize. If it is sincere, he could win her over. However,
I think guilty would be the word that I would use for a couple of instances. I feel guilty about Roger and Elizabeth. I don't have any regrets. I feel guilty about a lot of things, but I don't have any regrets.
it is deflating if you recognize that Jerry is a crucial vote Colby needs, but it probably doesn't matter to the general audience who sees her as this vile villain who is there to just ruin everything. By the time Final Tribal is done, you still feel like Colby made a mistake taking Tina. He has a shot at this thing. After all, he's been the fan favorite all season. So when the votes are revealed...
Tina. 2 votes, Tina. Colby. Colby. 3 votes, Colby.
Told you!
The winner of Survivor, the Australian Outback.
Colby could have won it, and it deflates his story that he had all season, but it was hinted at almost the entire last third of the season that he was going to take Tina. But the hints were easy to ignore when most of us were googly eyes for him. I do have videos on Tina, Colby, and was Jerry Matthew really a villain for anyone who's interested in learning more about this iconic season. Number 7. Season 32, Go Wrong. Aubrey, the mouthpiece of the second half of this season and our eyes and ears as to what was happening. If this season was anyone's story, it was hers. It seems like we always heard what she thought and experienced all the gut punches along the way that she experienced. A keener eye would have told us that there are some holes in her game that we are just not seeing. Her opponents at Final Tribal are Ty, who is very entertaining, but obviously burned a few people on the way despite his sweet personality, and Michelle, who is someone that everyone seems to get along with, but seems lacking in the personality department. After all, we don't see much about her and who she is based on the story being told here, which is very much unlike Aubrey and Ty, who we get a good grasp of their personalities. So this seems to be so plainly obvious to be Aubrey's game that even when Michelle wins something, who do we immediately hear from but...
Michelle gets to vote off a member of the jury. It's a game changer. And how she decides to play it could mess up my whole game.
Of course it's Aubrey, and who do we hear as that last lingering voice in our head before we go to Final Tribal Council? The person who explains their entire story for the season and their strategy. They explain their ups and downs, get you emotionally invested in their success with this Final Tribal vote. Of course it's Aubrey.
I've gone through such a transformation from day 1 to day 39. This game shook me out of my anxious ball of craziness. And while I might not have been the flashiest person, I was the woman behind the curtain, making things happen.
At Final Tribal, we are even reassured that Ty has no shot, so we are starting to feel better and better about Aubrey winning it all.
Ty, is there more than one personality in your skull where you just were torn with indecisiveness in your strategies?
We then hear from Debbie about how she clearly witnessed what Aubrey told us earlier, how she changed, how she grew over the course of the season and became the strong player we are seeing now. Debbie doesn't even say a word to Michelle, by the way. But despite no one really getting mad at Aubrey or saying she done screwed up, everyone treats her fairly respectfully, and she does the same. The jury doesn't really seem bitter at all, which is great for her. However, we hear from 3 different jurors about how Michelle flipped the game on its head when Julia was voted out, and it seems like because of Michelle's strong endgame, she is being loved.
Michelle, you out-toughed those 2. Ty got weaker. Aubrey got weaker.
But that doesn't really feel like we were being set up for an upset with Michelle win. More like Survivor's trying to set up a worthy opponent so that Aubrey winning feels a bit more earned. So when the votes are revealed, it is shocking as the evidence was not very plain to see on a first-time watch.
Michelle, Aubrey, Aubrey, Michelle, Michelle, the winner of Survivor, Michelle.
And by the way, Debbie didn't even vote for Aubrey. Talk about a real blindside for us at home after those amazing comments she made about her. Number 6, season 38, Edge of Extinction. This one stings for a lot of Survivor's hardcore viewers. The fact that the person who was voted out 3rd this season came back at the final 6 to steamroll everyone with flashy moves, including the fan favorite Chris Evans, to get his butt in the final tribal is wild. But based on the evidence of the past 37 seasons, especially based on season 7, everything inside of us says no. Chris can't win this game. He barely had any sort of storyline going into the final episode, and while Julie is a lock to lose based on how the story has been told about her, it seems far more likely that Gavin is our likely winner, since at least he made it 39 days in the game proper and didn't receive a single vote against himself along the way. And everyone seems to just generally like him, even if he does seem a little boring. While we hear from Chris about how he survived on the edge for 28 days and came back to make many flashy moves, the last person we hear from before Final Tribal is Gavin, who tells us that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and he wants the jury to know that he had a strong social game that got him to the end, and he received 0 votes against him along the way. He is going to win the title of Sole Survivor.
Like, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and if I don't seize every opportunity whenever I have the chance, then I'm going to go back home and think, what if? Tonight's the biggest battle in 39 days, and I've got to bring it, and I'm ready. I'm going to win the title of Sole Survivor.
That is a strong winner quote right before Tribal, and it is the last thing we hear before going there, as at this point you as an audience member are either in one of 2 camps. Either you love that Chris came back and blew everything up at Final 6 and just laid the smackdown on everyone over the course of 3 days, or you appreciate Gavin's old school approach to the game that time and time again has been the proven winning strategy for so many before him. This Final Tribal even starts well enough for Gavin, as Chris makes himself look bad when he interrupts Gavin just trying to explain himself.
My social game was my strategic game.
Gavin, my question to you is, are you building those relationships as someone who's in charge, or are you building those relationships as a goat?
Can we also let the jury ask the questions? Like, I'm sorry, that just offended me slightly,
That was really rude.
Both Gavin and Chris make great points about why what they did is more deserving, and it actually gets to a point where Jeff asks the jury who is truly still undecided here, and a surprising amount of people raise their hands. But while Chris starts weak and Gavin starts strong, by the end, it's clear that Gavin doesn't know what his jury values, and Chris clearly does. Though to be fair, Chris sat on the edge of extinction with them for 28 days, so I am sure they discussed this, but that is the theme of this season, and it's the twist that you have to deal with. Gavin tries to explain that how he got to the end is the classic way of playing, and the jury reacts fairly negatively to this.
If you want to talk about classic Survivor, then it's surviving 39 days. It's not getting voted out on day 8 and then coming back on day 35 and having a chance to win this game. Being over there, you don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to worry about someone backstabbing you or blindsiding you.
Look, the theme is not on trial here. You 3 are on trial.
Over the course of Final Tribal, it feels like the momentum Gavin had going in now has been taken by Chris and his obvious understanding of what the jury wants. So when the votes are revealed, a real shocker takes place.
Gavin. Chris. 2 votes, Gavin. Chris. Gavin. We are tied again. Gavin. Chris. Chris. Chris, the winner of Survivor, Edge of Extinction. Chris.
Gavin probably didn't have a chance going into this Final Tribal, but it really took seeing Final Tribal and the vote reveal to understand that this was the case. We just didn't see it coming until it actually happened. Number 5, Season 8, All-Stars. Boston Rob ran this season top to bottom. Tell me if that sounds familiar. The story has shown us his every positive and negative. He got the girl, betrayed his friends, and controlled who went home on every single tribal council he attended except the very first one. How could the jury not reward him for his superior gameplay? Meanwhile, he has not only been rob-fathering everyone in the island all season, but also us at home with his confessionals, painting a picture of what he wants us to understand about this game, and we believe him, and we are along for the ride. It seems clear going into Final Tribal he should just clean sweep Amber 7-0, as that's how it feels. He was the underdog and he conquered the season like no other. We hear this from him as he is the last one to speak before Final Tribal Council.
I did everything I wanted to do out here. I did it to the best of my ability. I gave 110% every single day.
And Final Tribal starts off well enough for him as he seems to be in fairly good spirits. However, when Lex, the first juror, speaks to him and Amber, that facade Rob has built for us at home about how he is the greatest in this season's underdog seems to fade away as maybe, just maybe, he won't clean sweep Amber 7-0.
What kind of a friend are you, Rob? What kind of a friend were you to me? You asked me to do you a favor. Bro to bro, friend to friend. And I did the only thing I could do. You sold out your values, you sold out your character, and you sold out your friends for a stack of greenbacks.
But no biggie, he doesn't need Lex's vote to win. He can still get this 6-1. After all, he controlled the season and dominated in the game of Survivor, and that's what makes for great television. Alicia is next, and she rails both of them for how they played, but who is she the hardest on? Boston Rob.
Competitively.
Excuse me?
Competitively.
Okay, so maybe he's winning 5-2. Still, he's got this. He dominated and controlled the order everyone went home, so surely the jury will recognize this and value it above everything else, including how he treated them, right? Well, Big Tom is a fair man, and despite being crapped on his way out the door, he asked them both the same question: why should I vote for you? Rob should apologize to Tom, humble himself, recognize that he has hurt a friend, and treat him with the utmost respect, because that is the opposite of what he did when he voted him out. Him and Big Tom were tight all game, and Big Tom was loyal to Rob until the bitter end, despite any side conversations he may or may not have had. So, does Rob take this humble approach?
Why should I vote for you and not Amber?
You and I know inside what really happened in terms of who said what and who lied about what.
In other words, you voted me off because I was going to try to kick you off?
You did try to get me kicked off.
Well, that's one way to go about things. The guy you need a vote from is giving you a fair chance to explain yourself and possibly apologize, and you turn things around on him instead when he has made it clear as day that he is hurt by your betrayal. So how does Tom respond to this answer Rob gives him?
I just want to say no hard feelings.
No hard feelings, Tom.
Don't be stupid. I may have failed for saying it once. I failed for it twice. Not this time.
But wait, there is a surprise right before the votes are revealed.
I love you with all my heart. Will you marry me?
Wow, now that has never happened before in Survivor, and it really doesn't happen again on Survivor, at least not with this amount of success, and it certainly caps off the love story we saw all season from them. With that, there is still a vote reveal, so does Rob get the girl and the win?
The winner of Survivor All-Stars.
So wait a second, this guy who dominated all game lost? As it turns out, the lesson is not dominating Survivor what matters, but instead understanding what your jury values and being flexible enough to adapt to what they want. I have very detailed videos on Amber's win, Rob's loss, and how he could have won on this channel, so I do recommend watching those. Number 4, Season 20, Heroes vs. Villains. 2 winners and the biggest villain Survivor's ever seen are sitting in the Final 3, and let me tell you, it's an iconic Final 3. The biggest villain has once again shot himself in the foot many times with his wild ego that has us pretty much knowing he won't win, though he might get second again. He did get that last season. You then have what has to be the front runner going into Final Tribal, Parvati. It is easily argued she played a better game this time than what she did on her winning season, and all the while she used Russell like a pawn, like her own personal lapdog. Whereas Sandra, who has pretty much been non-existent in the story of the season until the second half of the game, where we basically get that same sassy lady who played a near-perfect game at Pearl Islands, is here to play and be anti-Russell, anti the guy everyone hates for how he treats people, and just anti his mere existence. As long as people aren't voting for her, she's happy, and she is the last person we hear from before Tribal.
When I was out here, I had to hustle. I had to make sure all my stuff was in order so that when I went to Tribal Council, I made it out in one piece. And yet here I sit, Final 3. I think I deserve it.
It's a pretty enticing speech, but it hasn't meant much as we have seen previously. Now, going into Final Tribal is a toss-up between Sandra, Parvati, and actually Russell to a certain extent, as he has a very loyal following of people following Samoa who thought and still think he is the best to ever play. The opening speeches happen and the tone is set for what to expect. Sandra got to the end by herself with no help from others. Russell is sorry for hurting people if he did, and Parvati made Russell her pet dragon. Once again, her words, not mine.
He was the dragon, and instead of slaying him, I kept him as my pet.
It is 3 different approaches, that is for sure, but it definitely sets this as a 2-horse race between Parvati and Sandra. Someone will be the first 2-time winner. If you saw and remember Sandra on Pearl Islands, you know she is brutally honest with others and herself, and she's actually pretty fun at Final Tribal, and she hasn't really changed here. And it's well contrasted between her and Parvati. While Parvati's taking the puppeteer role and Sandra is taking that brutally honest path that has her saying everything with pretty much no layers of BS behind them.
I wish my strategy had been better, because had it been really good, Russell wouldn't be sitting here.
So did that strategy work for you?
It didn't work for me. It just never panned out. I could never get heroes on my side.
Parvati even tries to downplay Sandra's game and act as if she wasn't really trying to win, but Sandra is so likable and charming that she reverses what Parvati says by drawing a positive response and being lighthearted, while Russell just can't seem to figure that out.
Sandra, did you only get 50 or 60% of the challenge?
No. I wish I would have known that you were going to throw that thing in his bag, because if I could have intercepted that thing, I would have threw it right back to you and told you, don't do this, you don't know what you're doing.
By the time Final Tribal is done, it isn't super clear who will win. I mean, it is super obvious who won't win. Russell gets stumped on almost the entire time. But between Parvati and Sandra, it is anyone's guess. And even though in retrospect what Rupert says basically sums up the jury's thoughts, it all seems like on its face, he is just for Sandra since they both came from the same season. So when the votes are revealed, it is actually a coin flip on what to expect, though the odds seem to be in Parvati's favor. And
Parvati. Sandra. Parvati. Sandra. Parvati. We're tied again. Sandra. Sandra. The winner of Survivor, Heroes vs. Villains. Sandra.
And with that, we get our first ever 2-time winner in the game of Survivor. Number 3, season 36, Ghost Island. Unlike in past seasons where it seemed like a 2-horse race once we got to the final 3, this season it's been a 2-horse race almost the entire time once we hit the merge. It has been the Dom and Wendell show for better or for worse, with Laurel as their lackey, threatening to flip on them when she talked to us, but doing jack diddly squat when it actually came time to make a move. So when it comes time to Final Tribal, we know it is a showdown between the 2 giants who ran the season, and we really don't know who will win. Sure, Dom has been this season's narrator, but Wendell has a lot of charisma and is kind of a cool cat, even showing off at the final 4 fire making challenge to secure his spot at the end.
Very quickly, Wendell has a decent fire, looking over at Dom as if to say, I'll be seeing you momentarily.
So far, it seems like there is a curse though going into Final Tribal when it comes to this list. If you're the last one to speak to us before Tribal, then you're likely going to lose. Sandra's the only one so far who has bucked that trend. But Dominic, this season's eyes and ears for us, tells us that he hopes not to come across as too cocky and says this is going to be a Final Tribal Council for the ages, which is all just talk. We hear lots of big things like this before a Final Tribal, so while you want to believe Dom is telling us something that is prophetic, the previous 35 seasons have told us to be a bit skeptical about a big promise like that.
I believe in my heart that I had the best gameplay out here, and I think I have the ability to explain that and justify it to this jury. I think we're going to see an epic Tribal Council, and I know that it's going to be one for the ages.
The Final Tribal is exactly as predicted, a 2-horse race between Dom and Wendell, and it is not clear whatsoever if either of them has an advantage over the other. Jeff returns, and instead of going back to the States to read the votes, he says,
All right, I'm going to read the votes.
What? The first ever tie at Final Tribal, and it blows our minds. Do they revote? Is there a final fire making challenge to see who wins? What happens now? Well, funnily enough, Jeff did say at the Game Changers reunion / finale before the season was ever recorded that if there was ever to be a Final Tribal tie, since they have 10 people on the jury, that there will be a tiebreaker. And he told us what it was then, and he tells us what it is now.
Here's what happens in a tie. The person who is not tied, Laurel, you become the 11th and final member of our jury.
While the tie vote is a real shocker to everyone, knowing who Laurel is going to vote for is not. We saw all game how tight her bond was with Wendell, so when Jeff reveals the winner, everyone sees it coming.
The winner of Survivor Ghost Island, Wendell.
However, it is very interesting to note that the first 5 members of the jury vote for Dom, while the last 5 jury members all voted for Wendell. Very, very interesting. Number 2, Season 1, Borneo. This one is the most insane when it first aired, but it's still pretty crazy if you go into it unspoiled and just watch the season for the first time. All season there has been this talk of morality and how Kelly Wigglesworth is Luke Skywalker and Richard Hatch is basically part of the dark side, aka Darth Vader. That is literally how she describes the situation, by the way. I am not making that up. So when Kelly Wigglesworth defies the major alliance by not only winning 4 individual immunities, making sure she gets to the end, but also flipping on them multiple times to try to appease herself to the jury, but also make herself feel more moral, then you have a classic case of the good guy versus the bad guy going into Final Tribal, and the jury has shown that they all hated Richard going out the door. At least the Pagong members seemed upset that they got duped by a 4-person alliance, and Richard even gets the last word before Final Tribal, which so far has not been great.
If I get second place, I will not be sad. I will be happy that I've earned 100 grand, but I want the million. I really want the million.
Final Tribal even opens, and the views of how to play this game are contrasted when Kelly starts off with saying she hopes they are not judged by how they play the game, but who they are as people.
I'm not a politician. I didn't come here to campaign for myself, or I hope we're not going to be judged on how we chose to play the game. I'm hoping what we're going to be judged on, the person that I am.
Which is followed by Richard saying the jury can't really know who he or Kelly truly are based on the social game they just played, so he wants them to pick the winner based on who played the better game, and he says he had the superior strategy.
My approach to the game was one of strategy. For me, instead of who's the better person, it is about who played the game better, and I'm hoping you just respect my approach to the game from that perspective. From early on.
They both stick to their guns with every question, which includes one iconic speech by Sue Hawk. And what is really cool about the season is you see every juror vote and even hear why they're voting for who they're voting for. All of them, except for one juror. So before Jeff reads the final votes, we do already know that at minimum, Richard and Kelly each have 3 votes. But what about juror number 7? What about that final juror? Is there something we can gain by hearing his question and their answers to have a good guess as to who he mysteriously votes for?
Rich.
Greg.
Choose a number between 1 and 10.
7.
Kelly. A number between 1 and 10.
3.
Yep, that's all you get. Now, it would take a keen eye and knowing how the season ends to understand why Greg votes for who he does based on the time he does spend in the game with both of these people, but basically we're left in the dark until Jeff reads the votes right there, not waiting to do it months later in the States.
Rich. Kelly. Rich. Kelly. Rich. Kelly. The winner of the first Survivor competition. Rich.
With our modern way of thinking about Survivor, it would seem clear that Richard was going to win, but to audiences at the time and based on the way the story was told, it seemed like actually Richard was being set up to eat humble pie, but that just didn't happen, and it was shocking. I do have a video all about Richard's game if you are interested in learning more. Honorable mention, Season 4, Marquesas. This one is an honorable mention because the storytelling this season doesn't truly set up the stakes in a way that the other seasons on this list do, but when Vecepia goes into Final Tribal with a jury that consists of 6 of Nalia's peers and only 1 of her own, and yet she still wins 4-3 in a time of Survivor where this is unheard of, is truly shocking. But the storytelling never really builds this up like it should, so that's why it's just an honorable mention.
The winner of Survivor Marquesas.
And number 1, Season 19, Samoa. This is the big one. Russell Hantz versus Natalie White versus Mick. For context, this season has been the Russell Hantz show for better or for worse. He has found idols, helped lead the charge on Foofo, beating Galoo when Galoo had an 8-4 person advantage, and has told us his every single thought on everyone and everything. He has had a whopping 108 confessionals this season, while Mick has had 28 and Natalie has had 15. So obviously he must be the winner, and it isn't even going to be close. Just write him the check, even if Natalie doesn't think so.
Russell making us feel like we're not gonna win or that we don't have a chance, but I have news for him. I'm not gonna give up.
Russell gets the last word going into Final Tribal, and while the odds are not in his favor based on the list so far, Sandra and Richard have proven it is not a death blow to whether you win or not.
If Mick or Natalie won this game over me, that would just be a shame. You know, it wouldn't make any sense to me. I've accomplished the impossible out here, all by myself.
Russell takes the approach with his opening speech by saying how he dominated everyone and everything strategically this season. He made a ton of moves, found lots of idols with no clues, and generally controlled who went home most of the time. He was a wrecking ball to everyone else this season and makes a strong opening statement that ends with a question that makes him seem like he's the only answer in his mind and in ours based on the story of this season.
If either one of these outwit me, then give them the money. But you know what? I don't think that they have. May the best man win.
But slowly and slowly, as Final Tribal goes on, it is made more and more clear how out of hand Russell and his ego have become, and the jury isn't really buying much of what he is selling. At one point, he interrupts Mick, who is answering a question, to say that, actually, don't think that Mick and Natalie are just so much better than me. After every time I made a move, they would come up and high-five me and say, Russell, you should win the game. That's what Russell is saying they said to his face.
They would congratulate me. Good job. That was probably one of the best jobs in history, Russell. You should win this game. You're running the show here.
The final juror, Eric, really sums up exactly what most of the jury is thinking when he lambasts Russell's arrogance and points out how Mick feels entitled to win based on how he is quote-unquote the good guy. And Eric's assessment here is right based on both of their Final Tribal performances. But this seems all way too late. We have watched Russell walk all over people all game, that his sheer dominance means he will win, right? He has to win. Isn't Survivor all about dominating and controlling everyone who goes home? Eric doesn't think so. In fact, he praises Natalie's humble attitude and her kindness, but Natalie still has a fight in her that Colby didn't have previously on this list to want to win, and he praises all these attributes as being far more admirable and worthy of $1 million than anything Russell or Mick has displayed.
You would say that you were probably the least deserving of the title of Sole Survivor. In an environment filled with arrogance, delusional entitlement, maybe the person who thinks that she's least deserving is probably the most.
What is interesting, though meaningless, when you are waiting in anticipation of Russell getting the votes and winning, is that Jeff says it's not enough to simply get to the end, but you must please the jury of your peers to vote for you. Anyways, Jeff then reveals that Russell won in a landslide.
Natalie, Russell, Natalie, Russell, Natalie, the winner of Survivor Samoa. Natalie.
I'm sorry, wait, what? Natalie won? But how? The story all season has told us that Russell controlled the game. Russell dominated everyone in his path. He broke new ground, finding idols without clues, and everyone else was just a pawn in Russell's game. The storytelling, while wholly unbalanced, actually looks like Russell ran the show and was the clear winner upon a first casual watch, but upon rewatching, you see how he lost and how Survivor isn't all about walking all over people to get to the end. It is about getting to the end in a way that makes your specific jury want to vote for you. Whatever they want, you need to figure that out and make it happen. As a fun aside, I went back to look at the past 40 seasons to see what percentage of people who won were the last to speak before Final Tribal, and the numbers are intriguing. Out of the 40 seasons, the winner was the last one to speak 16 times, which is about 40% of the time, and it gets even worse odds if there's only a final 2. Out of the 40 people that were the last to speak, only 12 were women, and only 3 people can say that they spoke last before 2 Final Tribals, and those 3 are Amanda Kimball, Sandra Diaz-Twine, and Boston Rob. Were there any other shocking winner reveals I didn't include here? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and an extra thanks to the patrons for making this video happen as they picked it to be made.